Hello beautiful booktubers, it has been a while but I'm finally back with a wrap up. So I'm just going to rattle through these in the order that I've read them. This is going to cover February and March because I didn't get round to it in February for a multitude of reasons. So I've got my bullet journal with everything written on, so I'm just going to go through them. So the first book I read in February was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. That is the second book in the Farseer trilogy, I think it is. I am loving these books. Robin Hobb is definitely worth all the hype. Her writing is just so easy to read. I don't want to give any spoilers, so I won't really go into the ins and outs of the plot, but roughly it is just about a bastard son of a dead king who turns out to be, he gets trained to be the royal assassin, and it just goes from there, and there's absolutely tons of stuff going on. There's a lot of characters in it, but somehow you manage to keep these threads all clear and all in right place, and all the characters seem really well rounded. So I am really enjoying Robin Hobb's books, and I definitely want to read more once I've finished this trilogy. I have got the third one. I gave The Royal Assassin 5 stars just because I couldn't find any fault with it at all. Really enjoyable. Bought some new highlighter, so my face looks all shiny and not nearly 40 years old. That's what I'm hoping. Next is a graphic novel. It's Lock and Key Volume 1. I bought this for my partner for his birthday and finally got round to reading it myself and really enjoyed it. Lock and Key is about a weird kind of haunted house where lots of strange stuff happens. I don't want to spoiler it, but it's fantastical and it's dark and it's a bit murky. Goodreads says, Lock and Key tells of Key House, an unlikely New England mansion with fantastic doors that transform all who dare to walk through them, home to a hate-filled and relentless creature that will not rest until it forces open the most terrible door of them all. So that's a spoiler-free thing for you there. If you haven't read it and you like creepy stuff, haunted housey stuff, ghosty type things, then give it a go. It is very good. I haven't bought the second issue yet because they're £18 a go, so I haven't been able to afford it, but I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. Next I listened to the audiobook Where Am I Now by Mara Wilson. Mara Wilson, for those that don't know, was the little girl who played Matilda. She was in, I think, that Robin Williams film, Mrs. Doubtfire, and was basically a victim of her own success. As soon as she wasn't cute anymore, she stopped getting roles and that sort of thing. And this is just, it's narrated by her and it's just an account of her life, and I did really enjoy it. It does jump around a bit chronologically, which I found a little bit confusing, but she's got a really beautiful, gentle voice and she's just a pleasure to listen to. She's tea time. She's very down to earth, and it was just kind of nice to listen to like what goes on when children are employed in Hollywood and the things that they have to cope with, especially if you grow up and you're not cute or incredibly sexy, if you grow up to be not normal looking, but if you grow up to be average looking, then what does that mean for your Hollywood career, and how she came out of that and how she went to university and, you know, how she got on with her life basically. It's really good. I gave that 3 out of 5 just because I thought it jumped around chronologically and it was a bit confusing, so I ended up downmarking it for that. Next was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. I bloody love Caitlin Doughty. For those that don't know, she does have a YouTube channel, and I will link it down below or up here or whatever, and she talks about all things death and funeral related. She is a mortician, and I believe her channel is called Ask a Mortician, and it's a bit sort of memoir. It tells the story of how she got into being a mortician. Then she goes on to talking about what does death mean to us, how do we cope with other people dying, why do we have the rituals that we do, what do they mean, why are we so distanced from death when we never used to be. And her writing is really easy to read. I thought the pacing was good, and it was just really enjoyable for a non-fiction about such a macabre subject. I really enjoyed it, and I've actually bought her next book, which is on my shelf. And I gave that one 5 stars as well, so it's been a pretty good reading month. Next up, I read Dollhouse Epitaphs by Andrew Chambliss. this is the continuation of the story from the TV show Dollhouse, which I think was a Joss Whedon one. It starred, not Fruza Balk, that is not the right person. It stars Eliza Dushku, who was Faith in Buffy, and it's about, this is called the Dollhouse, where rich people can go and people are wiped clean and imprinted with new memories, and you can buy them for 3 hours, 10 hours, 2 days, whatever, and you can have them imprinted with whatever you want. So this is the continuation of the fallout of when that happened. This flips into the future, and it is really good. I found it quite enjoyable. Not amazing, but the graphics were good, the story was okay. It was a little bit predictable, but still enjoyable. I don't think there's been any more since that, so I'm not sure what the plans are with it, but I give that 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, Tale of the Body Thief by Anne Rice. For those that don't know, I've been working my way through the Vampire Chronicles. I'm up to, I think this is book 4, where Interview with the Vampire, Queen of the Damned, Vampire Lestat, Tale of the Body Thief. Yeah, this is the 4th one, and things are starting to get a bit hard going. I think I've kind of remembered now why I didn't read them all in the past. Once you get past the Vampire Lestat, I don't know, I just felt like, so this, well, I'll tell you what it's about first. So, Tale of the Body Thief goes on, somebody approaches Lestat and says, I will let you inhabit this young man's body that I'm inhabiting for $10 million for 2 days, and I get your body for 2 days. Everyone tells him not to, and of course he does it, and shit hits the fan when the guy that has Lestat's body pisses off and just does what he wants to do. So it's a bit like, but it takes ages to get up to that part. I felt like it's a pretty hefty book. I don't know where it is, but I just felt like I just wanted it to get to the point where stuff was happening, and it just wasn't. And then eventually it happens, and it's okay. You inexplicably get this dog that somehow likes Lestat and knows when he's in vampire form and when he's not in vampire form, but you never find out why. It's just there, and I don't know, it's just, I didn't love it. The pacing was off, like I said, it took ages for anything to happen. When it did happen, it was okay, but again, I think I was having a bit of a discussion with Indie Insomniac, because we're both reading them at the same time, and he mentioned, you know, once Anne Rice has given Lestat all this complete power that he can basically do anything, whenever, wherever, where do you go with his tale after that? You can't really, it's just going to be boring, and that's what happened in Tale of the Body Thief. It was a bit boring, it was a bit convoluted, and you didn't get anywhere. Like, I just, yeah, wasn't too keen on it. So I gave that 2 stars. I think I am still going to carry on with the books, but the next one isn't part of the Vampire Chronicles, but it does link in. I think it's called The Witching Hour, so I've got that one, which you'll see when I do my book haul. Transmetropolitan Volume 4, The New Scum by Warren Ellis. For those that don't know, Transmetropolitan is the ongoing tale of Spider Jerusalem, who lives in a basically ruined future where materialism, hedonism, selfishness just runs rife, and he is a jaded journalist, but everybody really likes him and everyone gets him to write the stories and everyone wants to be with him, and somehow he ends up from living in a cabin in the woods to being really famous and living in a posh high-rise flat where everywhere else is polluted, and this has like special air cleaning things. I don't know what my hand's doing, I don't know why I'm doing this, but so yeah, this is just a continuation of that story. I can't really go into it any further without spoiling it. If you like jaded, sarcastic, but also really exaggerated views of where we could end up if we carry on like we are now, Transmetropolitan is probably for you. I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. Next, a bit more non-fiction. In Order to Live, A North Korean Girl's Journey to Freedom, and that is by Yeon Mi Park. I got this quite a while ago. It just caught my eye when I was in a bookshop. Sorry, my allergies are playing up. It caught my eye when I was in a bookshop and I decided to buy it. It is the true autobiographical memoir or tale of Yeonmi, and she grew up in North Korea. It tells how her and her family grew up and the hardships that they encountered, and after they escaped, how they escaped, what happened when they did escape, and where they ended up. Now, I don't really want to tell you all the ins and outs, but it is quite a harrowing story. Some awful things happen to them, and some of the things that go on in North Korea, for no other reason than these selfish dictators just want to keep the power, is just disgusting. Well, back then they didn't know anything about life outside of North Korea. They don't worship gods, they worship the dictators. They feel like the Americans are pegged as these cartoon evil villains that are the reason that all the hardships are happening. It's just absolutely heartbreaking that there are so many people over there living that life and those hardships just because of this family of dictators. And I didn't really know much about it, so I don't want to say I really enjoyed it, but it was good to learn so much about what happens there. And Yeonmi's story is a happy one. Her and her family did get out, but it's not happy all the way through. The stuff that they had to go through for that is heartbreaking. But the writing is good. I felt engaged with it all the way through. It was an important thing to read, and I think it's important that people know about places like North Korea. I don't know what we can do to help. I don't want to come across as like white saviour, but it's important to know that these things happen. So I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. Next is a graphic novel, and I have been waiting for this graphic novel for over a year. The Lost Boys, for those that don't know, is a vampire film from the 80s. Now, I was born in 1980, so when I was probably 10, 11, I first watched The Lost Boys. I probably shouldn't have, because I think it was a 15, but I was allowed to watch it, and from that second I was obsessed with vampires. I was obsessed with The Lost Boys. I'd watch it every day when I got home from school. I know it inside out, and I still to this day watch it. I don't recommend the sequels unless you just forget that they're related to The Lost Boys completely, because they're pretty terrible. But anyway, this, I can't remember who it is, Tim Seeley has carried on The Lost Boys after the film finished. This is pegged as what the sequel films should have been. But I was really disappointed. First off, the story is convoluted and paper thin. It tells the story, like I said, it's set after the film, and the first thing I noticed was there's a lot of saying instead of showing. So they'd go, oh yes, well, if you remember this and this and this happened back then, and it would reference something in the film, and it was things that maybe you didn't really need to know about, but this for some reason felt the need to recall it. I guess for all us Lost Boys fans, they were trying to like piece it together, so you were like, yes, it definitely links up with it. But I just found it annoying and tenuous, and I didn't like it. Now the plot. Jesus Christ, the plot is crap. Like, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it turns out, I don't want to spoil it too much, but I'm telling you it's rubbish, so you're probably not going to read it. But it turns out Star is kind of a double agent, so even though she was safe from being turned into a vampire, she was still working with the vampires, and it turns out this vampire that we've never seen before is a very old vampire who is trying to raise the original vampires so that they can come onto the earth, and it is just paper thin. Like, they could have done so much more with it and it would have been amazing, but they just didn't. So yeah. And the last thing, the artwork, really lazy. Like, I mean, some of them looked great, but if you look in and you look at Star and you look at all those old female vampires, I kept getting them confused. They looked really similar. It was just like they'd drawn 10 of one vampire because they just couldn't be arsed, and I felt like that brought me back out of the story again. So all in all, an absolutely massive disappointment. I gave it 3 initially, but I think now time has passed, I'm probably going to give it 2. Every Other Day by Jennifer Lynn Barnes is a story about, it's a supernatural, I think it's YA, it's a supernatural story about a girl who, when she hit puberty, she turns into this supernatural hunter, but only every other day, hence the name of the story. And it's quite good. I did enjoy it. I got through it really quickly. I thought some of the writing was a little bit cringeworthy, and in fact, I took a picture of a quote from the book. Its teeth tore into my flesh, my knife tore into its. See, that reads weird as well. The smell of sulphur and blood propelled me onward, as familiar and comforting as towels straight out of the dryer. What? As comfort... Oh. I just don't even know how that got in there. But there was a couple of things like that where I read it and went, what? That's really stupid. But overall, I thought the story was really fun. It was really, like I say, it was really easy to read. The characters were pretty good. It was kind of predictable, like you could tell who certain people were going to be. But the fact that she went from having no friends to having this group of ragtag outcasts that suddenly were her friends, you know, all that kind of stuff, it was kind of predictable. But it was really enjoyable and I devoured it really quickly, and it was quite exciting in places and trying to see who she was linked to and why. If you enjoy supernatural teen romps that are a bit predictable and easy to read, then give it a go. And I gave that 3 out of 5. Next up, Binti Home by Nnedi Okorafor. I bloody love Nnedi Okorafor. She is amazing. She's a fantastic writer. Binti Home is a sequel novella to Binti, and it's after she's finished on Binti, whatever's happened there. She went to university. She goes home. She feels like she has to go on a pilgrimage. So she goes home to see her family and stuff happens from there. There's more conflict as she brings back somebody that people view as enemies, and she also finds out some things about her family she wasn't aware of and things about herself, and it's just great. I loved it. I can't wait to get the next one. Nnedi Okorafor's writing is absolutely stunning, and with it being a novella, it didn't feel like anything was rushed. It did leave me wanting more, but I guess that's a good thing. And I gave that 4 out of 5. Next up, another graphic novel, Spread by Justin Jordan. Picked this up on a whim because I was off to the Deep in Hull, which is like a giant conservation aquarium-y thing, and I wanted something to read for the journey, and I loved this. This was very much harkened back to monster films from the 80s and 90s. It reminded me a lot of The Thing by John Carpenter, if you've seen that, with Kurt Russell. It's set in the not too distant future, and these weird monsters, the spread can infect you and it turns you into this tentacled blood thing. If I can find a picture, I'll put it here. And it is just horror-tastic, if that's even a thing. I loved it. It was gory, it was silly. There's a guy in it called No, who ends up having to look after this baby called Hope. Get it? No Hope. Because this baby is special, so he has to try and keep her safe, and it's just great, an absolute romp. I did read some of the reviews on Goodreads and people were saying it was stupid and they hated it and it was a rip-off of another story that he'd done, but I haven't read any of his other stuff, so I really loved it, and I gave that 4 out of 5. And finally, I read Fuck It, The Ultimate Spiritual Way by John C. Parkin. This is a non-fiction self-help book, and the long and short of it is, stop worrying about everything, stop trying to make everything make sense, and just fuck it. And it was alright. You know, I feel like it didn't tell me anything I didn't already know. It was written in a really funny way. The guy that's written it, I did laugh out loud a few times, but ultimately there was nothing earth-shatteringly new. But I think, again, it is good to read these things and remind yourself that, you know, you don't need to worry about all these things. If you don't exercise today, that's okay. Just exercise tomorrow if you want to. If you don't want to exercise, then don't do it. Just do what you want to do and live your life. that's what I got from it. Apparently they do retreats as well. I don't really know what else you could get from that, but it was written in a funny way. It was dead easy. I read it in a couple of days whilst I was reading something else. And I gave that 3 out of 5. Like I said, nothing earth-shattering. That is it for me. I'm sorry some of those were a bit vague, but because I read them a few months ago, my brain is absolutely terrible, so I had to kind of try and jog my memory about them, especially Lock and Key. I feel like I was super vague on that. But that is it from me. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and please subscribe, and I'll be back hopefully sooner than this time. No, sooner than this time? Hopefully sooner and more regularly now I've got my life sorted out a little bit. Okay, big hugs. Bye!